Hello.
Hello.
I got 2 free smartphones when I switched to MetroPCS.
One for him and one for me.
It's not for you. It's for people like me.
And parrots.
I knew I should have gotten a dog.
Get 2 free Samsung Galaxy J3 Prime smartphones when you switch 2 lines to MetroPCS and enjoy a 4G LTE network that's more reliable than ever before. MetroPCS. Wireless figured out. Coverage not available in some areas. Sales tax not included in phone price. Excludes numbers on the T-Mobile network or active on MetroPCS in past 90 days. See store for details, terms, and conditions.
Blog Talk Radio.
Every author has that one story that hits close to home for them. This is Yvonne Mason's.
This book is very personal to me.
The 50s has been idealized as a time of prosperity and growth for some. Those with mental and physical challenges often faced scorn and ridicule, and were destined to be left in so-called hospitals to wither and die. Dreamcatcher, Failure Was Never an Option, is the uplifting story of a man named Stan and his family's courage to defy the odds and succeed in an era where no merit was seen in the challenged.
It is the true story of my brother who was mentally and physically challenged. It is because of my brother Stan that I am a successful author.
Dreamcatcher, Failure Was Never an Option is available through Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com now.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Off the Chain. I am your host, Yvonne Mason, and yes, that was a piece of shameless promotion by my friend Christopher Dunham, who is a fantastic ad man. If you need an ad, want an ad, would like an ad, find him on my Facebook friends and hook up with him, because he really brings things to life. And it doesn't just have to be books. It can be music. It can be whatever you have on your palette of artistic abilities. That particular book is the reason that I am successful today, both as an author, as a radio host, as a clothing designer, not so much clothing, but as putting my photography on clothing to make it look rich and unique. Because my brother Stan, who is mentally and physically challenged, does not believe that failure is ever, ladies and gentlemen, failure is never an option with him. He firmly believes that if he dreams it, he can at least attempt it, which makes him successful. By not doing it, creates failure, and he refuses to fail. And real quick, I have to tell this story because there's been a lot of people praying for him. He had a very nasty fall down my mother's stairs in the house and had a concussion and a brain bleed. Now, he already has traumatic brain injury from encephalitis when he was a baby. And so he had a brain bleed, and while they were waiting on the paramedics to come and get him, he was trying to get up and walk. And he kept telling my mother's neighbor that she had to call his boss at Publix to let his boss know that he would not be to work that day because he was injured. Now, ladies and gentlemen, how many of us are that dedicated to our job, to ourselves, and to others, that in the middle of a traumatic brain injury, including a brain bleed and severe concussion, are we thinking about protecting ourselves and our job? I would dare say not many. This is just one of the many wonderful things my brother does. Read more about him in Dreamcatcher, Failure Was Never an Option. And that brings me to the show. This show was a 5-year dream. And on July the 5th, that will be the beginning of celebrating our first-year anniversary month. The anniversary is actually on July the 27th. But I have chosen July the 5th to do an anniversary show. And because the first show was about the granddaughter that we lost to an asthma attack, we are going to do an anniversary show and talk about her and her successes. The show is successful, ladies and gentlemen, because of each of you and because of each of the wonderful guests that I continually bring on this show and promote because I believe in them. They are important to me. You as listeners are important to me. And because this show has taken on its own life form, and I have just become the facilitator. As of right now, we're less than 1,500 listeners away from 10,000 listeners just on Blog Talk, including all the other podcasts that I do run with the archives of this show. We're well over 20,000, working towards 25,000. I am so humbled and so appreciative and so grateful that you, the listeners, and you, my guest, have allowed me this platform to showcase each of you and to bring you exposure that, as my guest tonight and I were just talking about, they might not get. This show is heard in over 65 countries. That is difficult even on a good day. But with all the podcast and the show itself, we're heard in over 65 countries. And on Blog Talk Radio, our biggest listener, and I say this at every show, is Australia. They out-listen the USA 3-1. I am so grateful for my listeners from down under. They are magnificent. So I know that my guests are getting exposure. I know that my guests are getting heard, and I am very, very humbled. That being said, I have a guest tonight who's never been on my show before. This is her first time. She is an amazing author. I can't tell you how amazing she is, so we'll just let her tell you. Her name is Ritter Ames, Ritterames. And no, y'all cannot run over to Amazon and start looking at her books. You know how we do this. We talk to Ritter first. She is the brand. Her books are not. She is a USA Today best-selling author of The Bodies of Art Mysteries and the Organized Mystery Series. She lives atop a steep green hill with her husband and Labrador Retriever and spends each day globe-trotting the world from her laptop. Much like her Bodies of Art Mysteries, Miss Ritter's favorite vacations start in London, then spiral out in every direction. She's been known to plan trips after researching new books and keeps a list of can't-miss foods to taste along the way. Her most recent release, Fatal Forgeries, the fourth book in the fast-paced, light suspense Bodies of Art Mysteries, was released June 6th of this year. So she has not been out but a couple of days with this particular book. All her titles are available in print and ebook formats, and she blogs, I can't talk anymore, regularly at her website, ritterames.com, and post at Pinterest at pinterest.com/ritterames. To capture great places and ideas that she wants to use in both of her series. Following her blog and boards to learn more about Ritter and her upcoming books. And you can find her on Facebook at facebook.com/RitterAmesBooks and on Twitter at Ritter Ames. Ritter, thank you, my dear. Thank you for your indulgence last night when I had a brain cramp after a very stressful day and tried to put you on last night instead of my other author.
That's okay. I understand. This is release week, so, my brain is kind of out to lunch part of the time anyway because we've got so many things going on all at the same time, so I totally understand.
I came back from the event in Cocoa, 3-day event, and Monday was supposed to be catch-up day. Well, it was catch-up day, but not the kind of catch-up day I wanted it to be. And yesterday was much the same thing. So your patience with my utter stupidity and lack of intelligence is so appreciated. And TK, she is so good. I said, Tiki, I'm sorry I had a brain cramp.
I'm just glad I wasn't the one that forgot. It's like I would have hated to have forgotten that I actually had a commitment for this. So I feel relieved. Let me put it that way. I feel relieved that everything was okay.
Yeah, we were good to go. It wasn't you, it was me, and it was just one of those days. Murphy moved in, and then he forgot to leave. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
But that being said, now that we're both on the same page and the same day and the same hour and on the same telephone, let's talk a little bit about you. And I always like for my audience to know my guest and how they got here from point A to point B. Did you fall into writing books? Did you fall into writing about faraway places? Was this the path that you wanted to take as a child? Or was it a path that you veered off to after something else happened in your life?
And this is going to sound so silly, but it's really the honest truth. I discovered the library. Really discovered the library, at an early age. I had a grandmother that took me all the time. But I didn't discover mysteries until third grade. Third grade was when I checked out a book called The Brownie Mystery, I think it was called. And the only reason I checked it out was because I was a Brownie Scout at the time. And so I was relating to it. And I was hooked. From then on, I was hooked. And then in fourth grade, but at the same time, I didn't think about people actually writing books. They were just these magical things that were in my library. I could just go, and if I had a question and I couldn't find something to read, the magical librarian led me over to a new place and showed me a book to read, and it was always a wonderful book, and it was exactly what I wanted because she would talk to me before to find out what my interests were. And so I just thought the library and books themselves were a magical place. And then in fourth grade, I read Little Women. Identified immediately with Jo March. And when it got to the part where Jo was writing books to make a living, that was honestly the first time I ever thought about the fact that could be a career. And all of a sudden, it was like the light bulb went off. It was like, this is it. This is what I want to do, But then, life in general interferes. I had an eighth grade teacher. I had an eighth grade teacher English teacher she was marvelous. She was just marvelous. She was very supportive, and I was always a good student. I was a very strong studier, which you can probably tell from the way I research, for my books and all. But I wrote a story that ended up being in a national contest. That she had sent it off, and that's how it got into the national contest, and it placed in the national contest, and we were all excited. I don't think I won any big deal. I think it was like a $25 savings bond or something, but it was just the idea of winning. It was just that was the best part about the whole thing. And I said, okay, this is it. Now I know I can do this as a career. And she looks at me and she said, learn a lot of math and science. And, I was heartbroken. And I said, you don't think I can write for a living? And she said, you don't know how hard it is to write for a living. And, because I didn't know it at the time, but she had tried to be a writer, too, and she ended up being a teacher her whole life, and she was an outstanding teacher. And that's, it's one of those things where after she said that and after I did more research, I found out that was truly, I understood what she was talking about then. So, I went to college. I started to major in journalism, and I realized there was just no way I could make a living. I'd be living with my mom and dad until I was 40 years old, and so I ended up going into business instead. And it was really taking that journey that way that actually helped me understand so many things I now need for writing, because it gave me the ability to sit and figure things out and figure a source. But the background that I took to get where I was going ended up being like speech classes instead of drama classes. And speech class, actually, I probably learned more writing in speech class and how to write well and get my point across in speech class than I ever learned in English class, even though I had really good English teachers, because you had such a short time to get your point across for speech and debate. And so that made a big impact on me and helped me through life and has helped me with my career. And then I honestly, the bodies of art books are really a fallback from the fact that I was really an art school dropout, or I should have been an art school dropout. I took art from my freshman year to my senior year. high school level, I had the same students in the class with me. They were all absolutely gifted artists. I mean, it's like everybody was good at something, and I was awful. I mean, every project I turned in was a disaster, except for if I used needle and thread. If I did a stitchery project, I could turn something in that I could get an A on. But, I mean, you don't even want to look at my watercolors or my egg timber or anything relating to painting. It was a disaster every time. And I had the same teacher from 9th to 12th grade, and my senior year, she looked at my latest, what the heck is this project, and looked at me and said, why did you choose to take this class for 4 years? And it was one of those things. Yes, I chose to have this kind of humiliation on a daily basis because I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it so much with all the other students in the class because they were all so gifted. I was the best audience they could have because I would have to hurry to get work done because I knew I wasn't going to be able to do anything as good as him, but I could have sat and watched everybody for hours. It was just amazing to watch everybody create on whatever medium we were using. And so all those things together, the disappointment here, the disappointment there, I found new ways around that. So when I went to college, and I'm taking business courses because I can't take journalism, or I took some journalism courses, but I just decided I wasn't going to stay with that because I wanted to actually be able to make a living in life. And then turned around and I found all these art history courses in college that I had never had before. And, we discussed theory and design elements. We talked about art ethics, and I never had to pick up a paintbrush or a charcoal. I mean, it was like I could go in there and feel like a success going in because I knew I wasn't going to come out feeling like I should have made a better grade. And so that's also where I learned about missing art, forged masterpieces, priceless works hidden for years, and the mystery of all that just added to the allure of the classes. And so all of my electives went to every art history course they offered, art ethics course, every humanities course that related to art, everything. I mean, it was like I would pick up everything I could on art. And so all of that, eventually became fodder for my Bodies of Art mysteries. But at the same time, it's like on the organized mysteries, it's more of a left brain rather than right brain, where Bodies of Art is kind of more right brain, wisdom, left brain tendencies. But organized, I've got a character who has to have everything a certain way because she's a little OCD, and everybody kind of works around her. It's not really bad OCD, but it's something that the family tries to cater to and all. And so you've got the organized mysteries, which is her trying to put her world into order, everybody's world into order, but all she does is walk into chaos all the time. Whereas in the Bodies of Art, it's kind of the same thing. Laurel is trying to bring an organization to the chaos of whatever art that is missing or whatever, but she just basically thrives in chaos. So it's a different setup, and it's like whichever way I feel like being that day, that's which way I can go. It's a really great way to earn a living.
Well, let's talk a minute, because before the show we were discussing, and some of our audience may not know that there used to be only a few genres. There was horror, there was mystery, there was true crime, there was historical fiction, and there was comedy. That was about all there was, and suspense. There was suspense. So there were 6 different genres, and your book had to fit in one of those genres. But as indie authors, we have exploded the genre scene because we can write whatever we want to. We're not boxed in by someone saying, well, if you're going to write it, it's got to be in one of these 6 genres. So there is a new genre out there, ladies and gentlemen, called the cozy mystery genre. And it is, I've read many, many books in this genre, and they're easy reads, they're funny reads, and they are filled with suspense and highs and lows and sometimes love stories. But there is a catch in these cozy mysteries, and that while they have all of the elements of mystery and comedy and love and suspense, and this is these are some of the things that Ritter and I both do not believe in putting in depth in books because it's not needed, and that is a love triangle, or authors who think readers are dumb, because we know readers are smarter than most authors think they are, because readers now are that word I can't pronounce tonight, well-traveled.
Well-read.
Thank you. well-read and well-traveled, and they know how to do their homework. We also don't believe in changing the character's dynamic in midstream. And the last one is unnecessary sex, violence, and language. Tell the readers how that affects a cozy mystery if you do that, if you add all those dynamics.
Well, the cozy mysteries actually have evolved a lot in like the last 20 years. Cozy mysteries, like the grandmother of cozy mysteries, you might say, was Agatha Christie and
yes.
Dorothy L. Sayers, and you have the very inclusive society where everybody knows everybody, and that was the real dynamic for the Miss Marple series. She could always figure out who done it based on the fact that this person reminded her of the grocer's son who walked off with the money from the bank, or she always could peg people based on the personalities that they fit into, even though they weren't. She was someplace besides her home village, and cozies have evolved from that. We don't have quite the tight communities in the cozies anymore. Some do. I tend to do that with the organized mysteries, with Kate McKenzie and her business, and then she's got the next door neighbor that kind of, who's a lot more adventurous and pulls her out of things. But she's the outsider. She's come into this new community in Vermont, and then the next door neighbor kind of keeps her in track so that she doesn't make any enemies by saying things she shouldn't or not knowing something that she should know. But so that one's more real traditional cozy mystery is the organized mysteries. The bodies of art are both my series have been put into the cozy side of Amazon, and people tend to think of them as cozies because there will be some four-letter words in bodies of art, because when you're being chased and somebody's shooting at you, you don't say darn. It's just not going to happen. And so things like that. But I don't use any really distressful four-letter words. And nobody is gratuitously killed. If somebody's killed, it's as much as possible off screen. I don't try to have the gore in there, but they're going to know somebody's died. And so, but the situation about sex, when you and I were talking earlier, I was at Left Coast Crime last year, and we kind of turned the tables on the audience. And after we did our panel thing, we started asking them questions. And one of the things we asked them was, "What do you never want to see in a cozy?" And overwhelmingly, everybody said sex. And that's the lifelong thing, but that's the one thing that really hasn't changed that much. A lot of the other parameters about cozies have not really changed so much as maybe got a little more flexible, but people still are adamant about the fact that they want to be able to hand this book over to their grandmother or their teenage niece and say, "Here, you can read this. It's not going to hurt you," And
right.
These are mysteries that are supposed to, they make you think. They show you a different side of humanity sometimes, and maybe change your mind about things because of the way you see things from this character's point of view. But they aren't supposed to make you so uncomfortable you would want to put it down or not want to recommend it. We want people to recommend our books, and so that's what cozy does. It's kind of an escape route. It's like the happily ever afters in romance. You may not like that somebody died in the book, but you like the fact that the bad guy's going to get caught. And so you've got that form of happily ever after and mystery that you don't necessarily have in real life, because we have to wait longer for it in real life, or we have to maybe not even see it at all. So it's a nice happily ever after from that angle.
And one thing that I noticed in doing my research of you, which we talked before the show, and I find all these little nuggets, is some of the TV shows that have influenced you has been the Miss Marple series, the Columbo series, and one of my favorite, the Avengers. I thought I was the only one that remembered Mrs. Kendall.
I still have VHS tapes of Diana Riggs. I mean, it's like I as a kid between her and Batgirl. I mean, it was like, I know it was the boots, but it was like I wanted to be one or the other. I didn't care which one, but I wanted to be one or the other. And,
well, they were women ahead of their time when you think about it, because when those shows were done, women were still considered like Father Knows Best, or some of my three sons, where Mama was in the kitchen wearing an apron all day long, cooking up dinner and cakes, and taking the husband's shoes off when he walked through the door and handed him something to drink and saying, "How was your day?"
Yeah. Well, and the other thing, what I absolutely loved about the Avengers was, even as a kid, I realized that Steed really thought she was smart. Mm-hmm. And it was like, he would ask her opinions on things, and he would defer to her when it was something in her area of expertise, and he knew what he was doing. It wasn't like he didn't know things, but it was just, you didn't see that a lot in the 60s. You didn't see men deferring back to what the women thought, and I really loved that, because even as a kid I could see that and relate to it.
That's true, because the 60s women were still not considered. I know, ladies, y'all are going to come through the phone screaming at me, but I'm a child of the 60s, so I know what I'm talking about. Women were not considered independent of their husbands, nor were they considered smart enough to make any decisions outside of being barefoot and pregnant.
It was definitely a change. I mean, it's one of those things, and that's kind of, there are certain things, especially in it's not necessarily the 60s, but it's just the women situation in general. I touch on that in Marc Masters, where I touch on the art scene and the difference between women artists and how they're perceived. And even back in like the Renaissance era, there were women artists in the Renaissance era, but they weren't given shows. It was like they were supposed to be models. They weren't supposed to be artists. And so, I mean, we've come a long way, baby. I mean, but
yes, we have.
But it's really fun to go back and look at these kinds of things, and not just in recent history, but 500 years of history. I mean, there's a lot more, and seeing what's happening and why it happened and that sort of thing. But like I said, it's not anything that was just inherent to the 60s. It was just life was just different, and we've got things changed, but we've done so one step at a time, one walk at a time, and that sort of thing. And I don't try to do a lot of that in the books, because again, the books are supposed to be an escape, but when I can put something in, like I can put something in about the Renaissance artists and have the difference between men and women, that's the way, then I'm able to do that just from that angle and just give people a new idea that maybe they hadn't thought of before.
And also, when you think about it, Ritter, some of these women authors were well ahead of their time. For instance, the Agatha Christie series,
mm-hmm.
her character was written so ahead of her time that she's still beloved today. The same with Mrs. Marple. When you go back and you watch those series or you read those books, even the dialogue is ahead of its time.
Right. But by the same token, I mean, the classic for everybody probably to understand cozy better than anything else, the classic example is the television show Murder, She Wrote. And I mean, you can't get any cozier than Murder, She Wrote. And when that show was at its peak, it had 50 million viewers a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because it had all the dynamics of a mystery, a little intrigue, a little love story, but it didn't go over, and of course there was always murder, but you never saw the blood, the gore, the bedroom scenes, and all the stuff that you and I've talked about that isn't necessary to make a good storyline.
Well, and you got to know the characters. That's one of the things that my publishers, I just got into contract for the Bodies of Art series, and they signed me for another 5 books. And in that, one of the changes that they did to the contract was they upped my word count, another 5,000 words, which is phenomenally great, because when you have something as complex as these books are, and you have really smart characters, and you really want to use these characters well, you want to show all the motivation you can with these characters, rather than just having to do a synopsis later to explain to readers why they did what they did or whatever. And that that extra space really makes a difference. But the characters, I mean, that's I don't know about you, but that's what draws me to a series. I mean, I want to know who done it and how they done it, and I want to see how they solve it. But I have to like, the characters are what I want, and I want complex characters. I don't want characters that are the same every single time. I want to see growth in the characters. I want to see somebody that maybe I didn't exactly understand the first book, and each consecutive book lets me know a little bit more about them, to where I know why they act the way they do, because I now know something from the 4th or 5th or 6th book that didn't come out in the first book, because an author can't put everything out there in the first book. If they do, they've just given you the character study, and that's not what anybody wants to buy. And so, adding those extra layers each time, that's to me the beauty of a series, whether no matter what kind of series you're reading. And Murder, She Wrote did that same thing. We had characters, and we knew those characters, and even Miss Marple and all. We knew her nephew Raymond, who sent her off on vacations whenever she needed to be sent off on vacations, because he was a well-known literary writer that she didn't read his books because she didn't think they were entertaining. And then his wife was an artist, Joan, who did really spectacular stuff, and she was so proud of Joan. And it was like, it's one of those things where it's like you knew these people. You knew that Crittenden, who was the former head of Scotland Yard, who held her high on a pedestal. And so every time you'd see him again, if anybody said anything derogatory about her, he would immediately set them straight. She wouldn't have to do anything, because everybody knew what she was like. So those things about a series is what everybody likes. And I know, back to kind of a television example, my husband and I watch NCIS every week. And there was one show that we started watching, and I hadn't seen the beginning of it. And when I read the synopsis, I said, I was at some meeting or something, I came in the middle of it, but I think you saw it. And we started watching it, and so I'm watching the beginning really for the first time. I know who did it because I'd already seen the end of it, but I was seeing it for the first time. Well, my husband, who's not a writer, was watching it the whole time, and he remembered everything that happened to the NCIS characters, but he couldn't remember anything about the case and the mystery they were on that night. Because the mystery isn't why he watches the show. He watches the show to see what happens to the same. And that's I think, that's why we binge watch Netflix, and that's why we binge watch Hulu and every stream thing out there, because we're already geared into that whole, I want to know what happened to these characters since the last time I saw them. And that's our way of doing it with series literature.
And
I think
when we find an author that writes series, would you agree that we find the character that becomes our favorite, and it's for everybody, it's not always the same character, but we, like you say, we want to know how three-dimensional that character becomes, because as in real life, we all either grow, stagnate, or die, or all of the above.
Right.
And we just
Right.
don't want to be left hanging with this character out here going, okay, what happens next now? Why did they do that?
Yeah. Well, and we had a friend of mine, Julie Mulhern. Actually, I'm in a group with a lot of different mystery writers. And one time we were talking about British mysteries. I don't remember how the conversation started. And in Facebook groups, I know you know what I'm talking about, but in Facebook groups, somebody will throw a post up at the beginning, and then everybody will start commenting, and the comments can often go way astray from the original topic. And so I don't remember how the original topic was started, but somehow or other somebody brought in something about the Inspector Jury series. And both Julie Mulhern and I both at the same time said, oh, I love Melrose Plant. Melrose Plant wasn't even in the first couple 3 books. Melrose Plant is a secondary character that we started reading it because we liked the Inspector Jury, and we liked the artist that lived the actress that lived downstairs, and we liked the unconventionality of the way the Scotland Yard inspector worked, his superintendent, Scotland Yard superintendent worked. But once Melrose and his little motley crew comes in the middle of an investigation, it's like jury stumbles into an investigation, and then once they're there, it's like then somehow or other Melrose gets into every book from then on because he is wonderful. He's like a modern day Lord Peter Wimsey from Dorothy L. Sayers. That's the only comparison I can think of. He's given up his lordship, but he still has the house, and he's got an aunt who drives him crazy because she wants to come live there, and he's kind of shuffled her off, and she's so upset because he doesn't keep his lord title and all. And all those things are what draw us back to the series. And Martha Grimes, who is an excellent author, I tend not to read anything of hers, but I always read the Inspector Jury because I want to see what Melrose is up to. I like Jury, but I really like Melrose, and it was really funny that Julie Mulhern and I both jumped in at the same time and said the same thing because we both like Melrose Plant.
Now, I find that interesting because you also read, and you read some of the authors my husband reads. You read Frederick Forsyth. You also read Steve Barry. Those are 2 of my husband's favorite authors.
Yeah.
Do you read
I read very eclectically. I'm a very eclectic reader.
But what that does, though, is that broadens your writing horizons. When I teach writing or talk about writing, the first thing I say is if you want to write mysteries, read mystery writers. But also read other writers because it broadens the ability to write eclectically.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, it was one of those things where it's like I read I read for humor, I read for interest. Frederick Forsyth he's like a god to me. I mean, I can't think of any author I absolutely can't think of any author that I think writes better than Frederick Forsyth. And I can't think of her name. One of the authors in one of my groups just won an award, and I wish I could remember her name so I could say it for you. But it's lost. It's not there right now. But she won an award, and he presented the award to her, and it was like I would be a paddle on the ground. I mean, there's just no way I would be able to go up and accept an award from Frederick Forsyth. It's just as well I didn't win. But I've read, especially all the really early ones. I just fell into those so much, and it's just he's just phenomenal the way he had, especially the Cold War books. Getting in there and really showing how that whole thing was. But I also absolutely love Christopher Fowler's Bryant and May series, which takes place in London. It has 2 septuagenarian, octogenarian, I don't know how old they're supposed to be. They've been around forever. Detectives, and they solve things in very unconventional ways. And there's a lot of humor. There's a lot of London history. And you can just see the enthusiasm he has for that. But at the same time, I also read. I've read everything by Douglas Adams. I absolutely love his Dirk Gently detective series, which only were 2 books, and then he ended up he had a heart attack at like 47 or something, and so there weren't any more of those. But everybody always knows about Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but I think the Dirk Gently books, which have now been turned into TV series over on Acorn, I think, are getting a little bit more attention now that they're in video form. But the books were just phenomenally great. You had Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, and then you have The Long Dark Tea Time of the Soul, and that was where Thor comes to life in the airport. And it's like in all these things that you bring, you look at all these things, and it's just dissimilar stuff that it helps you remember things about things I mean, it's like different things that come up. It's like, oh, I can remember when such and such, and you think about how you can change that a little bit, and I love watching the evolution of authors too. You have like Kate Atkinson, which I absolutely adore her Jackson Brody series. I wasn't crazy about the BBC production of it, but I loved the books, and I only picked up the first book, Case Histories, because Stephen King said you've got to read this book. I mean, it's like, well, if Stephen King says that, I guess I better read this book, And so I read the book and absolutely fell in love with it, and read every other book in that series. 2 years ago, I guess, when The Catch came out on ABC, it was, it's always been a midwinter replacement, and it's only about 10 episodes long each time. And that show was created by her. I mean, it was like she wrote the initial proposal for that, and then it was taken by Shondaland and it got the Shondaland touch and all. So it's like I've seen her evolution then as a writer, and it's like, and what was really surprising to me was when the Bodies of Art books came out last February. The first 2 books came out a year ago, February. Somebody reviewed it one of the books last summer, and was saying how she had been watching the Catch and found that there was so much similarity between those books and The Catch. She wasn't real crazy about that. I think she thought I was ripping them off, and it's like, you've got to understand, those books were written years before the first publicity, because everybody thinks you write these books and you put them out the next week. It's like, no, you don't understand. We edit for 9 months. I mean, exactly. So it's like, after we get the book done, then that's only the beginning, Right. And then it's in pre-order for 3 months. It's like forever before the books come out. So yeah, it was really funny when I read that. But reviewers they don't know, because they don't realize, it's not like I've just picked. Oh, I like that show, I'm going to write a series about it. It's like my series isn't like that series at all, except they're both attractive, and Laurel's always financially challenged, but that's just the way she is. But it's like they find a way to be around the rich and famous whenever they need to. So I can see the similarities, but it's not really,
So since we're talking about we've segued into your books, give the order of the first series, The Bodies of Art. Give the order of how they came out, how they need to be read, and if they're standalones or not, and where they take place, because they take place all over the world, right?
Right. Yeah, I wasn't. I thought about branding from the beginning. I mean, I was in corporate for long enough that I knew you want to pre-plan all that stuff ahead of time, because once you get it kind of set, then you don't have to worry about it anymore. But I didn't think it completely through, because I didn't do I should have done like Sue Grafton and get everything in alphabetical order. And instead, they're not in alphabetical order. But the first one is Counterfeit Conspiracies, and that is it starts off in Italy around Milan and Lake Como. then it goes to London, and then it goes to France, to a mountainous region of France. And that was just a lot of fun. It was just a lot of fun to write. I mean, I was able to put in places I'd been to and different things I'd seen, and it was just a lot of fun. And then Marc Masters, which is his second book, kind of picks up where Counterfeit Conspiracies left off. In Counterfeit Conspiracies, it ends with them finding out about needing to go to Florida, and so they go to Florida and get what they start to go there. Then they go down to the Miami art scene, and which is a really big thing. I mean, it's like because the weather's so nice there, it's really grown into a big art scene. And I love Art Deco buildings, and they have so many Art Deco buildings down there. And so they spend a couple of days there, and then they jet off to Florence to follow the next clue in the series. And so Florence, Italy, I mean, it's like art writer's dream when you're sitting there talking about the Renaissance and the Duomo and all the historic buildings and everything there and all the historic art and all. And then they go to big events in each of those. Well, the third book is Abstract Aliases. And in that one, I have to stop and think for a minute. It starts off in London, and then they pretty quickly go to Rome. And so then I get to have them in Rome, which is a lot of fun. And then from there they go on to Cologne, Germany, and make a connection with somebody in the cathedral there, which is just a phenomenal place for art. And then end up in Baden-Baden and go to the casino and everything in Baden-Baden. And then this fourth book that just came out this week is Fatal Forgeries. And let's see. I'm sorry, I'm writing the fifth. It's like I'm in the middle of the fifth book now, and I have to stop and think about what actually happened in the book that I'm supposed to be talking about. Fatal Forgeries is pretty much like probably a little over half London, and then they go to Barcelona, Spain, and then they come back to London. And they probably travel the least in Fatal Forgeries, but there's so much going on. I mean, it's actually the longest book of the series so far that I've written, and I went over my word count for it. That was why I ended up getting the extra word count, I think, on my new contract. But it was just a lot of fun. The whole thing has been a lot of fun to write. The biggest problem I have right now is I really want to get them somehow to Madrid because I want them to go to the Prado so that they can go to the Velázquez wing there because my favorite art piece is there. It's oh gosh, I can't even think. I'm sorry. It's Las Minas and there, and it's showing the court in 17th century Spain, and there's so much going on. It's just such a fun piece because of that. And so those are the things I really love about the series. Not only do I get to take my characters to places that I absolutely love, and I love telling about them and love having them there, but I get to talk about artwork that is my favorite in the world. I mean, it's like in the fourth book, the book that just came out, Laurel goes in and rescues a Caravaggio, which I adore Caravaggio. He's like the bad boy of the art world. And I would love to sit and just have a book talk about how interesting the man was, but I can't do that. And it's like, in another book, the next book, I'll probably have her in Paris and talking about what Pablo Picasso was actually questioned about because they thought he had been involved in the 1917 robbery at the Louvre, where they took Mona Lisa, which actually put Mona Lisa on the map. I mean, it was like that painting, as much as we know about it today, people really didn't know about it until the theft, and then it became the news of the day, and then it was on postcards, and then it was in the newspapers, and people suddenly discovered this work of art that we almost know by birth now, that at the time, here it was sitting in the Louvre, and I mean, there was no glass around it, there was no protection. The guy just walked up and took it off the wall. I mean, it's like that's, yeah. So, I mean, there's so many fun things to be able to bring out. through this, not just contemporary things, but just art history things that nobody has to know about art to like reading this. You don't have to be a art historian. It's just fun to find out what Laurel tells everybody, and how Laurel sees the world, and how she interacts with the bad guys. And they have their conversations where they're trying to convince her that it's okay to have the copies, because look at all these art pieces that are gone for all these years because somebody stashed them in a closet somewhere and they didn't know. I mean, like a Caravaggio was discovered in 1917 in Florence, in the museum in Florence, because it was back in the storage room. No one knew it was even there, and somebody just stumbled onto it when they were looking for something else. And so the bad guys, tries to convince the abstract alias that was talking about how it's okay to have forgeries because this way more people get to see it because of that. And so then Laurel has to explain, no, it's not the same thing, and the bad guy thinks he has just as much of a reason for doing what he does as she does for what she does. So it gives me the ability to go in and take it from two different perspectives, and it's a lot of fun that way too.
And it's a passion, art, because you love art so much, going all the way back to being in the art class for 4 years.
Yeah, when I was the audience. Like I said, I was the perfect audience.
This has become a passion with you, and not only does it come through in our discussion tonight, but I know it comes through your writings. So you literally do two things. You entertain people with a cozy, but you also teach them about the art world. So they learn things, and some of them don't even know they've learned things until maybe later on a conversation something comes up and they go, oh, well, so-and-so was the bad boy of the art world, and his artwork was found in, and people go, how'd you know that? Well, I read it in a book.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, these aren't stuffy art books. These aren't I mean, these are, I have fans who have called them a cross between White Collar and Elizabeth Peters' Vicki Bliss series. I've had people call them James Bond meets Laura, whatever her name is, in Tomb Raider. I can't think what Laura. Oh, lost her name. But anyway, I've had people say it's a cross between Vicki Bliss and Leverage. I mean, because she's got a team of it rather than just single. She starts off on her own in the first book, then she kind of gathers new team members all along the way, and now there's like 4 of them, and she's constantly fighting the male protagonist because he tries to take over, and so there's a little friction there, but they're equally matched, and so that's what helps create not just the tension, but it's kind of like Castle. It's kind of like the Castle show. Mm-hmm. Everybody on that show was good at what they did. Everybody on that show was respected by everybody else. Even when the two secondary characters would goof off and act kind of clownish. I mean, when they'd be kind of the comic relief, you still knew they were smart. It was like it wasn't like they were the class clowns, and that's what I wanted with my series. It's like there is some humor, there's a lot of snark, but everybody, even when they disagree with each other, still respects the other. I mean, they still know that each one of them are tops in their field, and I think that's the best kind of team because everybody's on the same equal footing that way.
And, of course, with each book that you write, each of those characters grows and morphs and becomes more three-dimensional.
Right. Well, even the organization, those mysteries. It's like the first book. That was one of the things I was really pleased about because I had several fans come back and say, I was really surprised at how much growth there was in the first book. It's like, well, as a reader, that's what I want. I don't want the character to be the same at the beginning of the book as at the beginning and the end. And so then the next book, has a little bit more expansion, and you know everybody learns a little bit more about the kids and the interaction between the moms and the kids and the husbands and the wives. And I've had a lot of people say, you know, about the you know, them being happily married. It's like that's not necessarily a normal thing for cozies, because you know, most cozies, you've got a single sleuth, or you've got a divorced sleuth, or you've got a single mother, or whatever. And I have 2 married sleuths who are happily married, and they argue with their husbands, and they tell their kids to go take a bath, and they deal with everything. And and I've been really fortunate with that, because my publisher let me get by with that. But a lot of publishers want it to be a single sleuth, and it does make a difference, because I've had a lot of readers come back and say, I really like that.
So, ladies and gentlemen, you have to go, not till we close the show, on Amazon, author Ritter Ames, and you have to look for her Bodies of Art Mysteries and her Organized Mystery Series, Fatal Forgeries, Abstract Alias, Counterfeit Conspiracy, Marc Masters, and Organized for Scheduled Sabotage. That's a new one. That's one of her.
It'll be out the end of this month. It's not quite out yet. It's coming soon, though.
So I guess you can go and but not until we hang up, ladies and gentlemen. Ritter, you're not going to believe this, but our hour is almost up.
I can't believe it. I talk real fast, so I probably should have slowed down.
No, because that saves more for next time, and I hope you will come back when you get ready to release your new book.
Okay, great.
Just keep me in the loop, so we'll launch it on here just like we did the one that you've just, Fatal Forgeries, the one you've just released. But before we get too far into the downside, tell the folks where you can be found.
Well, first I want to thank you so much for inviting me here, because you give authors such a great opportunity. Just not just authors, but artists and everybody else. I mean, we are the introverted people who sit at our desks every day, and we're really happy sitting at our desks. And so these kinds of opportunities are great, and I really, really appreciate it. And I want to thank you on behalf of everybody for that. But no, easiest place to find me is I'm on Facebook a lot. I've got Ritter Ames. It's Facebook.com/Ritter Ames Books is my Facebook page. If you don't like Facebook, which a lot of people don't, I have a blog at ritterames.com. It tends to be more of a bulletin board. I used to write blogs a lot, but then I realized that the more blogs I wrote, the less books I wrote. So it tends to just be quick jump-ons and jumps-off to let people know. I do have a newsletter that goes out to subscribers, but the in-between information tends to go out in the blog. And I have a lot of opportunities from my publisher, Henry Press. They are just absolutely wonderful. They're a phenomenal small press out of the Plano, Texas, and Frisco, Texas area, which is near Dallas, and they're just phenomenal people to work with. And I've going more indie now. It's like I've got a lot of opportunities there. So really, just look around, because I'm kind of everywhere.
So, ladies and gentlemen, tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time, we have another new guest. Her name is Patty Loofborough. And, Ritter, thank you so much for the honor of coming on the show. And don't hang up once the show goes dark, because I have some things I need to tell you. But, ladies and gentlemen, You know that at the end of every show I give you these few words of wisdom for whatever they're worth. And remember what I said at the beginning of the show. Failure is never an option. And if my brother, who is classified as retarded, yes, I said the word, don't get excited. He understands the word. We use it in the right context. If he is successful in what he does, then you can be, no matter what it is. And you know that I always say that you just don't need to feel special. You need to be special. And if you want to be successful, stop asking permission. Just go out and do it. Also, your smile is your logo. Your personality is your business card. And after having an experience with you, the way you leave others feeling, that, ladies and gentlemen, becomes your trademark. And I know that every one of you want to leave a good trademark because you don't know whose life you might save that day. You don't know that your smile might keep someone from doing harm to themselves. Or maybe someone's had a loss in their life. And your smile and your small act of kindness, whether it's opening a door for someone or saying good morning to someone or asking how they're feeling, you don't know what effect that has on people. Yeah, it's easy to be grumpy and ill and tear people down and not let them live their dream. But that's not what we as artists are about, is it, Ritter? We are about making people laugh and be happy. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is Yvonne Mason with Off the Chain and my guest, Ritter Ames. And, yes, I will be bringing her back. We are off the air now, but I did want to tell you that when this show goes up into archives, and it shouldn't take it long, I'm going to put it on my page and I'm going to tag you in it. And then tomorrow I will put it up on Spreaker and SoundCloud and Mixcloud and Podcast.com and Podcast Garden. And I'm going to tag you in those links as well. Now, this show goes out to iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, FM.com, TuneIn Radio, and then all of those podcasts.
Wow.
So that's where you, yes, and each podcast has its own demographics of listeners.
Mhm.
You can also download the podcast and put it on your iPad, iPhone, save it on a disk, whatever you want to. But when I send you the links, feel free to put it on your blog, send it to all your friends, relatives, enemies, and pimp it, because this is my gift to you.
Well, thank you so much. Yes, I have a page on my blog for interviews, whether they're print or podcast situations, and so I'll add that link in there so that people can easily find it later. So thank you very much.
You are welcome, my darling, and I can't wait to get you back on the show because I don't know about you, but I had a ball.
I did. The hour flew by. I'm not, it's like I didn't know what to expect, and I thoroughly enjoyed myself. Thank you so much.
So be prepared to come back because now you belong to me, evil laugh.
Okay, just don't send the flying monkeys, okay? I don't like the flying monkeys. Oh, you know
about my flying monkeys.
Yes, I know about your flying monkeys.
But they will come and protect you, too. So if you ever need them, just send out a call, and they'll be there.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that. Well,
I take care of
you. Have a great evening.
You too, darling, and we will talk later. Now keep me in the loop so I can get you back on the show. All right, honey.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you so much.
Bye. Good night.
Hello.
Hello.
I got 2 free smartphones when I switched to MetroPCS.
One for him and one for me.
It's not for you. It's for people like me.
And parrots.
I knew I should have gotten a dog.
Get 2 free Samsung Galaxy J3 Prime smartphones when you switch 2 lines to MetroPCS and enjoy a 4G LTE network that's more reliable than ever before. MetroPCS. Wireless figured out. Coverage not available in some areas. Sales tax not included in phone price. Excludes numbers on the T-Mobile network or active on MetroPCS in past 90 days. See store for details, terms, and conditions.
Hello.
Hello.
I got 2 free smartphones when I switched to MetroPCS.
One for him and one for me.
It's not for you. It's for people like me.
And parrots.
I knew I should have gotten a dog.
Get 2 free Samsung Galaxy J3 Prime smartphones when you switch 2 lines to MetroPCS and enjoy a 4G LTE network that's more reliable than ever before. MetroPCS. Wireless figured out. Coverage not available in some areas. Sales tax not included in phone price. Excludes numbers on the T-Mobile network or active on MetroPCS in past 90 days. See store for details, terms, and conditions.